Chapter 2. Vanished. I was cleaning the shelf and came across his photo again. The memories of that final day flooded back so intensely as if they happened only yesterday. I remembered finishing supper when Ben called. Skype was the only way we could look each other in the eyes. Ben worked in the US as an engineering contractor for the Department of Defense. Even I, as his wife, was only vaguely briefed about the entirety of his role. Though we had discussed it a million times, both of us knew that me moving there and leaving Perth was unlikely. I couldn't imagine leaving my daughter Carter or moving her there, and this was home after all. Ben understood me well enough not to insist. Yet sometimes the loneliness of waiting all day for the only person with whom I could fully connect weighed on me. And then to have only an hour or two, given our time zones, the fragility of the net connection, and so many other impediments. I often wondered if this long-distance relationship was worth it, and whether I should just move over to him. When the call finally came, I was still amazed at the way my heart leapt just to be able to see his smiling face. It was nearly 7:15 p.m. for me in Perth, while Ben was just starting the same day, fresh after a shower. It was 7:15 a.m. in D.C. His hair was still wet, and he had only a towel around his waist. "Hey babe, how was your day?" His deep baritone was as exciting as when we had first met some 3 years ago. He started crooning our song, "Only You," without waiting for my reply. He knew as I did that my day was instantly better when he called. I couldn't help smiling. "Only You" had been the song playing at the Resta bar the first time he came into my life. He had just happened to walk into the bar where I was a waitress. Ben was overseas in a Navy vessel that was porting near Perth, and looked cute in his uniform. We hit it off, and he was not shy in pursuing me. Knowing him now, he must have been feeling lucky. After he was out of the military, we spent time together travelling and eventually got married. We applied for an Australian partner visa and were waiting on its approval. "How was work going?" I finally asked him when I got an opportunity to speak. I might have imagined it, but there was a momentary flicker in his eyes as he said, "Well, you know how it is." He distractedly combed his hair with his fingers as he continued. "We were working on something super confidential that could potentially change everything." He sighed and then said, "I wish I could tell you more, but, you know..." "Hey, it's okay." I tried to soothe him. "We knew this would always be so. This was something we discussed, remember? I know that what you do for your country is important." Ben looked a little cheered up by that. That was when I noticed the new streaks of grey in his stubble and the dark circles beneath his eyes. Work was definitely taking a toll on him. "But hurry up and move here already?" I mock pleaded just so I could hear his chuckle and distract him from whatever was worrying him. His last words before we ended the call were, "Babe, I love you. Have a good night." That was the way he signed off every day, so I had no warning about anything out of the ordinary. The next day I checked my phone, and there wasn't a message from Ben, which was unusual. He always messaged when it was 6 a.m. for me. A tradition he never veered from in all the time we were together. This was the first red flag. The second was his online activity. He was last online just a couple of hours after we spoke. That was definitely strange. He was always online during the daytime. I tried calling his number a couple of times, but each attempt went to voicemail. Ben wasn't really a fan of too many voicemail alerts, so he always tried to respond to them immediately. I put aside my fears and left for work, thinking that he would call back in a little while. But that was a mistake. I ought to have gone with my instincts and done something sooner. When I did not hear from him by lunchtime, my heart was racing with all the dreaded possibilities. What if something had happened to him? Hating the way I felt, I kept trying his number for the upteenth time without any success. My panic wouldn't let me think straight. I alerted all of my friends and my mum, but my lack of knowledge of Ben's nature of work held me back. I could think of only one thing. Long ago he had given me a number, for emergencies only, he had told me. I'd never had any use for it before, and I wasn't sure where I had placed it. It was evening before I could locate the number. I could barely keep my shaking hands steady as I dialed the number and waited tensely before a man responded. "Yes?" "I want to speak with Ben Casey, who works there. I'm his wife. He hasn't responded to my messages or calls for almost 20 hours now. I don't understand it. I'm worried." The man cut me short to ask, "What name did you say, ma'am?" "Ben Casey. B for Bravo, E for Echo. I thought perhaps he hadn't heard me right, but he never let me complete my words as he said brusquely, "I think you've made a mistake. This is the number for Travis's estate agents. There is nobody by the name of Ben Casey here." "What do you mean? Did he quit?" Even to my own ears, my voice sounded high-pitched and alien. There was barely a pause as the person replied, "No, I mean to say we've never had an employee by that name. I think you should check the number, ma'am. If you don't mind now, I have other calls waiting. Have a great day and hope you locate your husband." The voice said as the call was cut. I rechecked. I had made no mistake with the number. I Googled it and the man was right. The number was listed under Travis's estate agents. My head was spinning. I arranged things with my mum, who would take care of my 7-year-old for the time being. I booked my tickets to DC, and looking back on it now, I really don't remember the journey at all. My mind blanked out the details. When I reached the apartment he stayed in, which wasn't far from the Capitol building, the first thing I noticed was that his car was in. It was now 5 days from when I had last heard from Ben, so it seemed strange for him to be in his house all the while. I knew the combination to his door, so getting in wasn't a challenge. Just for a minute, I imagined him running out to hug me like he had before. When I opened the door, bones leapt out of me. God, had I forgotten about the 13-year-old blue pit bull terrier who was Ben's most trusted aide. I bent down to pat the sweet fellow. He seemed hungry for company and nearly wet himself in his excitement. He rushed past me after a brief hello to the yard and relieved himself. I looked around the apartment, which was littered with dog urine and poop, and called out, "Ben?" As I half expected and half feared, there was no reply. As Bones ambled back in, I asked him, "How long has it been since you were fed, boy?" He whined a little as he continued to sit at my feet obediently. I opened one of the bottommost kitchen cabinets and located the dog food and fed him. He ate it up ravenously, and I knew in that instant that something had happened, and that Ben hadn't been around for a while. He never left Bones unfed or on his own for long. He loved that dog like his own son. I didn't really know anyone in the city. I took buses and cabs to police stations and government offices. Nobody knew a Ben Casey. I showed them photos of us at holidays and from his last visit to Perth, a couple of months ago, and only his neighbours confirmed that they knew him by sight, but they couldn't provide me with details on when they saw him last. They were a smart couple, slick was the word perhaps. Though their house looked urban chic and they were dressed well, something about them seemed off. At the time, I just put it down to my nerves. The man had asked me, "What does Ben do for a living?" When I told him, he was eager to know whether I had contacted people from Ben's work. The woman, on the other hand, seemingly concerned for me, kept asking me about Ben's family. On the whole, I found it a strange exchange because it seemed I was being interrogated rather than the other way around. I couldn't contact anyone from his work because I did not know whom exactly he worked for. I had no name or person to contact. I went to the address of the estate agency and confirmed that they were what they said they were. At my wit's end, I kept calling the police station, where they half-heartedly filed a missing persons report. Frustrated, I knew that Ben hadn't just abandoned us. That was not the kind of man he was. The police were even less willing to help because I wasn't an American citizen. That day I was so angry and tired that I shouted at the police department. To be honest, I don't remember all the words I said. I just remember coming to my senses at the end and walking out to hushed whispers of, "Karen, her husband is missing, or so she claims." All the flyers I posted around his home with his photo remained unanswered. It was around the same time that a viral meme of me started doing the rounds. Somebody had caught me on my bad day in the police station yelling at the officer in charge. I officially became Police Station Karen, and that was that. What hope was there of being taken seriously with that nickname? When I drew a blank everywhere, I took Bones with me back to Perth. The old boy did not survive very long afterwards. It was a hard time, and only for Carter's sake did I eventually make peace with Ben's disappearance. It had been 4 years since I last saw Ben. As I finished cleaning the photo of him I kept in my showcase, my attention was caught by what I heard on the TV. I usually kept it on for a bit of noise and bustle in my house. This was a special announcement from the US President. His words made me catch my breath. He said, "The existence of aliens and UAPs have been confirmed. The species have integrated into society, and we are aware of at least 2 species that currently coexist with us. What the hell? I muttered under my breath as I hung on to every word of his. When he completed his speech, 2 journalists started their barrage of questions. What caught my attention first was the woman's perfect teeth, and the man's shiny, almost waxy appearance. I knew these 2. In fact, I had spoken to them. They were the ones staying next to Ben who said they had known him by sight. They had looked then like the perfect couple. Now, of course, they did not seem married at all. I listened intently to what they were asking. Mr. President, what would you like to tell us about the abductions rampant in the city? The glossy-haired woman asked. I felt the same sense of unease and panic rising up like bile in my throat. Abduction, I repeated. Something had clicked into place for me at last. As I turned back to look at Ben's photo again, I knew I wouldn't see him. Somehow, imagining him dead had seemed less painful. But even that comfort would not be mine. He was taken. In bitter anger, my knees weakening, I collapsed and began punching the ground. I wanted to draw my pain out to a physical source. As I lay there, I heard a soft call. Mum? Carter looked at me with her blue eyes filled with concern. As she bent down to hug me, I could almost feel Ben with me.